Becky Lynch is outnumbered. Both Lyra Valkyria and Bayley want a piece of her. And in the man's infinite wisdom, she decides to take a trip over to SmackDown. Hello, Becky. You've seen what's been happening on Raw, haven't you? Get on with it. I haven't got all day. Okay. Well, I had an idea. What if you scratched my back and helped me retain my Women's Intercontinental Championship against Bayley and Lyra Valkyria? And why on earth would I do that exactly? Well, I know you want that woman's title back, so you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, and I'll even throw in a sweetener and take care of that freak Alexa Bliss for you. Alright. Deal. An alliance has been formed. Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair have buried the hatchet, and now the champ has some backup. And she holds the end of her deal almost immediately, as later on in the show, during a match featuring Alexa Bliss, Becky Lynch strikes as she nails a manhandle slam onto the goddess. Then she goes to the outside and grabs a steel chair. She's going to injure Bliss, though her opponent isn't too happy with the match's result, as Tiffany Stratton confronts Big Time Bex, and the Women's Intercontinental Champion decides to put the chair down and back off. Although that's just because that distraction allows for Charlotte Flair to jump the WWE Women's Champion with that exact same chair. And she's relentless as she beats it into Tiffy over and over, even breaking the chair onto her. And after another manhandle slam onto both Alexa Bliss on the concrete floor and Tiffany Stratton into the ring, this dangerous alliance stands tall. And Becky is quite celebratory of this fact, as on the following Raw, she gloats that she is the greatest Women's Intercontinental Champion of all time and will be for the rest of eternity. Which brings out the woman she just assaulted the previous Friday. So, what the hell, Becky? Not only do you try to bury talent, but you side with the Wicked Witch of the West? Well, to quote John Cena, I don't bury talent. I am the talent. And I just simply bury mediocrity. And I will keep this division, this title relevant, and bury any so-called future stars, because I am the best thing in this whole damn company. Though, if in an imaginary world I wasn't the best, she would be. And as soon as she says this, Charlotte Flair smashes Bliss's back with a chair. But before she could do any more harm, Bayley grabs the Queen, with the two beginning to brawl. They even make their way backstage in the process. And whilst Becky just showboats, Lyra Valkyria jumps the barricade and drags the champ to the outside, with the two similarly brawling. It's absolute chaos. Lyra Valkyria and Becky Lynch even start brawling in the crowd. Yet with a well-timed blow, Becky is able to hit her with a sledgehammer, and she just taunts at her fallen foe, while backstage, we see Charlotte put the role model through a table. They're seemingly unstoppable. So in conjunction with Nick Aldis, Adam Pearce makes a plan, as he announces a humongous 6-woman tag team match, as Alexa Bliss, Bayley, and Lyra Valkyria are set to take on Becky Lynch, Charlotte Flair, and a woman who has beaten her partners before, Tiffany Stratton. Although before the match, we see a backstage interaction between the makeshift tag team, with Bayley saying, "What they're doing is disgusting, but we need an ace. They have the cheating and the surprise factor. We need our own advantage." And Lyra quickly replies, "Don't worry, Bayley. I'm already on it." What's Lyra's plan? Well, before we find out, it's time for the tag match. And after a fast and furious start from the trio defending wrestling, Lyra Valkyria falls to Becky and Charlotte's cheap tactics, which Tiffany Stratton finds very egregious. she didn't even want to team with them in the first place. And after constant tags and neglecting the women's champion, Tiffy walks out. Not before having a confrontation with Alexa Bliss. Although eventually, with Bayley along with Lyra handling Becky Lynch on the outside, Alexa Bliss is able to nail a Twisted Bliss onto Charlotte Flair to pick up the win for her team. But she doesn't take time to celebrate, as she goes up the ramp to once again confront Tiffany Stratton. And after disposing of Becky Lynch, we see the two former tag team partners staring galaxies from one another. Things may not be peachy between the two after all, though after this, a huge match is announced for the SmackDown before Night of Champions, as it's announced that Lyra Valkyria and Bayley will team up to take on Charlotte Flair and Becky Lynch. And the Defenders of Wrestling walk into Saudi Arabia determined to get the better of the two-woman power trip, and the frenemies get off to a good start, as the Bird Lady instantly sends Becky out of the ring alongside Charlotte, with her building a full head of steam and diving onto the two future Hall of Famers. But Bayley too wants a turn, as she too hurls herself at her fellow Horsewoman. And after putting Becky into the ring, she tags back in Lyra, with the two nailing a drop toe hold and elbow drop combination. And with a twisting armbar, the Bird Lady lights her up with a flurry of vicious strikes, culminating in an enziguri. Though Charlotte then distracts the former Intercontinental Champion, which allows Becky to get back into the match with a clothesline. And after tagging in Charlotte, they do some double team action as well, crunching Lyra's back in the process. Then the Queen just plants the Bird Lady into the canvas before hitting double knees to the gut. And from here, Char picks her up, though Lyra gets out of it, but she gets taken down just as fast. Yet after a follow-up chop, Lyra pushes back and nails another enziguri. But before she can make the tag to Bayley, Becky hurls the role model into the steel steps. So Lyra just goes for a Nightwing, although Charlotte gets out of it with 3 elbows to the side of the skull before nailing a punch and boot in quick succession. Lyra is busted open, and the Alliance loves this, as with a tag, Charlotte is able to hurl Lyra into Becky's boots. And the man just stretches out her limbs, first going to the legs, then after letting go, to the arm, and lastly, to the bloodied head, with Lyra desperately going to the outside. And after she distracts the referee, Charlotte Flair disgustingly swings a chair at Lyra Valkyria over and over and over again until she disposes of the evidence. It's unbelievable, and Becky Lynch of course takes full advantage of this, as after putting her back into the ring, she goes back to targeting the arm. Then she picks her up, although Lyra slips out and chop blocks Becky before making the tag, yet the referee was distracted by Charlotte Flair, which includes when Becky uses brass knuckles on the role model. She's out, and Lyra Valkyria is still the legal participant in the match, and with one last stand, she screams, which gets instantly followed up by a manhandle slam. The Alliance has won, they cheated their way to it, but for them, a victory is a victory. And this victory actually gets to Becky's head, as on the following Raw, she says, "Last Friday, I once again proved that I am the greatest actually, no, scratch that. I am just the greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time when I pinned the Bird Lady again. And I am that confident that I'm gonna whoop Lyra and Bayley's arse that I decided to host an open challenge. Come one, come all, the best in the world is standing right here." The Prodigy is looking to topple the man. Can she head to Evolution 2 as a champion? Well, she's doing her damned best to do so, as she immediately locks in a crossface, although Becky is able to fight out of it and lock in a disarmer, which Roxy just pushes away before planting Becky's face into the canvas. And even though she rolls to the outside, Roxy follows with a big dive. And this sets the tone for the rest of the match, as the Prodigy's speed and agility is able to keep Becky Lynch at bay for a majority of the contest, though the man still puts up a hell of a fight, even connecting a manhandle slam deeper in the match, yet Liv Morgan distracts the referee. There's a lot of history between these two, though Liv is actually doing it for Roxanne Perez. But with the referee distracted by Liv, she blatantly misses a pin from Roxanne Perez that would have possibly granted her the biggest win of her career. Though that's not to be, as after arguing with Morgan, she gets caught into a second manhandle slam by Big Time Bex, who picks up the big win, which Lyra is very thankful for, as she once again engages in a wild brawl with the man. And on the stage, we see Bayley join in with Charlotte Flair, even connecting a rose plant. All the while, Lyra Valkyria hits a Nightwing on the champion. But as she goes up the ramp, the role model confronts her. Things seem tense, and the role model breaks the ice with one more rose plant. Why has she turned her back on Lyra? Well, on SmackDown, Alexa Bliss hints at why this could be, as at the tail end of her promo, before her upcoming match against Charlotte and Becky Lynch, she says, "You two want to ruin wrestling like John Cena? When you don't even know that the Saviors are coming. I know your plan, Lyra, and I think Bayley does too." It's incredibly ominous by Bliss, who's forced to actually team with one of her opponents at Evolution 2, Tiffany Stratton, to take on the most powerful alliance in women's wrestling. But before we can get to Evolution 2, there's one more Raw to go, and it's time to find an official #1 contender for Becky Lynch's Women's Intercontinental Championship for the All-Women's event. And of course, the match is between the former champion Lyra Valkyria and Bayley, which is an absolute technical masterclass. Both women know each other's own moves inside and out. They're so incredibly even, it could go either way. But when Lyra looks for a Nightwing, Bayley is able to get out of her grasp and connect a Bayley to belly. Yet the Bird Lady survives, so the role model goes to the top rope, although Lyra meets her up there, and eventually she plants her with a big suplex, as it's then Lyra's turn to go to the top rope as she looks for a frog splash, yet she gets caught mid-air with a rose plant. But then Becky Lynch drags Bayley to the outside. It's unbelievable. Becky wants to take both of her rivals out, as she even connects a manhandle slam onto Bayley on the barricade. Although Adam Pearce then comes out and drops a bombshell that stops the champ in her tracks. You're so desperate not to fight these two, aren't you, Becky? Not unless you get the jump. So how about this? Evolution 2. Triple threat. You, Lyra, Bayley. Oh, and it's a 2 out of 3 falls match. And that's official. Becky Lynch is shocked, though even with that announcement, her shock fades away into brash confidence. As now, it's time for the All-Women's PLE. And after JC Jane retains her NXT Women's Championship, it's time for the Women's Intercontinental Championship match between Lyra Valkyria, Bayley, and the champ who runs the camp, Becky Lynch. Who will stand tall? Who will raise the Women's Intercontinental title at the end of the night? Well, the match is on, and it's full-blown warfare. All three are firing on all cylinders, though Becky is being overwhelmed in both fronts. So Charlotte Flair comes to her aid, although before she can get into the ring, Tiffany Stratton hurls her away, with the two brawling to the back. But this distraction allows for Becky Lynch to quickly roll up Bayley, to gain her first fall. And whilst Lyra distracts the role model in an attempt to get on the board, Big Time Bex goes to grab a chair. Yet Roxanne Perez takes it off her. But why? Well, we get a clue as when Liv Morgan comes out to argue with Roxy, Tiffy stands by her side, with Liv backing off and the two women following her to the back. And with this, Lyra is able to hurl herself at the champion and send her back into the ring before connecting a frog splash. Lyra Valkyria is indeed on the board, though as soon as this happens, Bayley comes out of nowhere to hit a rose plant to make everyone tied. It's down to one last fall, and Bayley won't be involved in the closing sequence, as Becky manhandle slams her on the barricade just like on Monday. And when the man gets into the ring, she looks to use the brass knuckles, but someone grabs it off her. And that person turns out to be the returning Kiana James, who doesn't assault Becky Lynch, she just simply makes the match a fair one-on-one contest with no cheating. As with her leaving, Lyra and Becky trade strikes like there's no tomorrow. Though the Bird Lady gets on top, and with the Nightwing, she reclaims her prize. She's the first ever two-time Women's Intercontinental Champion, but that's not the main takeaway of the match, as on the ramp lies Tiffany Stratton, Roxanne Perez, Kiana James, and finally, Lyra Valkyria. Her plan has been realised, and her plan has worked, as her closing statement explains everything. We are here to move women's wrestling into the next generation. No more being held down by the old timers. And that means out with the old and in with the new. I'm sorry, Bayley. Not so sorry to the other three dipshits. But we needed to make a mark, a statement. And what's a bigger statement than officially proclaiming ourselves as being the new 4 Horsewomen?